Hey everybody, welcome back to 3 Generations Restoration. Spring has sprung. We're into March. Good 67 degrees out today, so we're gonna get a couple things done hopefully in the shop. The door open. Last video you saw us working on the Case Model C. We did the carburetor on that. Today we're gonna be back working on the Oliver 77. So let's get right into it. All right, so here it is, the old Oliver 77. You may notice, okay, well the hood is on now, and it is. We have the hood on just to do a couple mock-ups. You also may notice, oh wow, the manifold is actually burned off. And the starter's new too. We'll get into that, but I just wanted to show you guys that the hood is on, all dirty. We are doing a mock-up, so we don't have this bolt in yet. This hood will come right back off eventually. We're gonna have to probably rivet or spot weld this battery access cover on, and I didn't think about that before we put this on. I gotta get the water temperature gauge hooked back up, and we're gonna get a couple other things done. But let's start with the starter. So you guys may remember in the past video, put a link in the description of how this starter sounded, and actually I'll throw a clip of it up real quick. It sounded really rough. It sometimes would actually engage, the actual pinion would engage to the flywheel and wouldn't disengage. So it would render the engine locked up. Now, I don't exactly want to say that that could be the whole cause to why this engine was locked up. We're going to keep it as it was, possibly just dry stuck. Although I do think the starter did have a little bit to do with it being stuck. So we ended up replacing it. Engine turns over just fine. But that got us to our next problem. The timing of the engine. You see, we got one wire here that's different than the others, and you remember that these were all brand new. So once we put the new starter on, the engine would lope when you would try to start it. It would go, you know, the starter would go, and then it would go, almost like the engine was backfiring when you were trying to start it. So I did a little looking, did a little digging in our service book, which I'll show you here in a little bit, and the timing of the engine was way off. The distributor was off, and number two, all the wires were incorrect. So the timing of this engine, of any 6-cylinder engine, is 153426. Too young, too old, just right. That's how I learned it in school. And this was just way off base of what it could be. So we fixed it, started it up. Engine was still lugging a little bit, so we turned the distributor a little bit and timed it just right. So now the engine starts up and runs perfect, and it charges, which had me a little concerned for a while about the carburetor, but carburetor's good, runs without choke, idle's good, goes up to high idle good. So we're set on the engine outside of an oil pressure gauge, which we'll do here soon. But that got me to our mock-up here. Now we got a set of side louvers for this tractor. Thinking, okay, these will go right on. These will go right on. You go to line these up, and they are the incorrect panels for this tractor. That's where they would normally sit, and they extend way far down past the actual frame rail. So I did a little bit of digging, and this panel here is actually off of an Oliver 88. Well, there's the police. So these panels are actually off of a Streamline Oliver 88, And I figured that out by posting some stuff in a Facebook Oliver Tractor group. So shout out to that group for helping a young guy out with these panels. So I got to work. I went on Facebook Marketplace and ended up finding a deal. Guy had 2 sets of Oliver 77 side curtains up in Wisconsin, and he's going to be sending them things down, and we're going to hopefully have a good set that we're going to be able to put on this. And I had envisioned painting those. I'm going to be painting the other ones as well. So we got the side curtains coming. We got the front nose cones good. We are missing the front Oliver logo here, which is, we can find that. And then I also kind of just mocked up this front little, I would call this a nose cone emblem holder, because this is where the badge is going to eventually go. So I mocked this up. This looks pretty good. This is in good shape. Front nose cone, the corners are in good shape. So really all we're missing is that front logo. So we're going to get that. The side curtains are coming. And then we are going to actually have to order, there's another set of curtains for the rear. I believe we may have something out in our shed, but I'm going to check. But we may have to order the rear side panels, which is, those aren't too expensive. So that's no big deal. But it's coming together. We got it pretty much, like I said, just kind of to see what everything looked like. We're going to obviously take that hood off and get that access cover repaired. But I think in today's episode, I want to repair the brakes. This tractor currently has no brakes, and you can kind of see that, you can kind of tell there's not really much there. I don't know if it is out of adjustment or if there are any brakes even in here. It does look like someone was in this area before. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is adjusting the brakes and seeing if I can't get something to work here and go from there. I am going to use the Oliver service manual, so we'll go to that and see what that has to say. All right, so here we are in our IT shop service manual, and we're in the brakes section here. And we do have band type brakes on this tractor. So just kind of reading here, looking, seeing if the stuff is very similar, and that's the actual linkage that's connected to the brake pedal, and we see that connected to the band brake here by a pin, as well as we can see the lining is part L. That's an anchor, retaining nut, brake, drum. So I'm sure the part number's in here somewhere, but I'm just looking to see kind of what the parts are, what their names are, go from there. So we're gonna go ahead and, here's the breakdown too of the parts, the differential. We're gonna go to the next page though and look at adjustment. Adjustment to compensate for wear of the lining is accomplished by removing the band actuator level or pedal and relocating it on the actuator serrations. Now the serrations, if you guys don't know, are on the end of the shaft, and they're almost like it's like a star shaft. So we're going to end up moving that probably. And then we're also going to adjust the length of the shaft to make it so there isn't as much free play. So I think that's what we're going to do. Doesn't really zoom in very well, but it says adjusting the double disc type brakes on model 77 and 88. So that's what we have. Looks like they're changing the position of that pin and lengthening that rod. But I do think what I'm going to do is pull that cover off to see what I'm actually doing, to see if I'm actually moving the disc, or even if there's a disc even in there. So let's go ahead and dig in. All right, so I just ended up actually disconnecting this rod straight from the actual pedal here up on the tractor. So now we should have no free play, or tons of free play, and really spongy. Now I pulled down on this and it is not sounding very good in here. So there's 4 9/16 bolts and screw, and there's 1 bolt, 2 bolts, and 2 nuts. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull that off, kind of get the condition in here and see what it even looks like. I think it's better just to take a look and see before I get too crazy. So I'm gonna take this little linkage off here and I'm gonna mark it, make sure that's where it exactly is, and then take this cover off. All right, I'm just gonna take a Sharpie here. Now it looks like this was done before, but we're gonna double check. Someone had a dot here and 2 dots here. So I don't know if this was moved before. I got 2 9/16 wrenches, and we are gonna hopefully take this bad boy off. At least loosen it, there we go. You can kind of see the little assembly here spreading, which is what we want. So we're just gonna leave this loose. Take a pry bar. We're gonna pry this apart. This should come right off of the spline. There we go. Got it off. You can still kind of see our marks, so just renew it on here. So set this down. Gonna have to wire brush or sandblast the inside of that. We're gonna clean this up too. Hasn't obviously been off in a while. There's a couple of, looks like split washer things in here. I think those are like keepers. I gotta find my socket. Should be able to take these bolts out now. See what's underneath here. Does look like this bolt here is holding it in as well. That's the parking brake. Well, this nut hasn't been off. It's got grease over the paint. I guess that's not a good sign, but this one's whole stud came out. I already got the top bolt out just because it was kind of in the way of the actual clutch pedal. Oh yeah, there's sand in here, guys. We're gonna slowly pop this out, kind of watching to see what we got. All right. I don't know why there's sand in here, but there is. Here's where the keepers go. So we're gonna keep in mind that those have to go back in there. But here's the actual brakes. And a lot of sand in here. Here's the whole assembly. I think what I'll do is I will set this down and kind of clean some of this dirt out of here and clean some of this up, grease this little bar down here, and we should be good to set this back in. This brake shoe doesn't look bad. It's not too worn, but it's just looks dry. So I'm gonna clean some stuff up in here and we will meet you right back. All right, so I got most of what I could out of there. I got all the sand out. I got most of that thick grease out of there. And then I cleaned up the actual band. Kind of just took a brush and a little bit of brake clean and wiped it off. Now I got a little bit of grease on this sliding pin that I'm gonna put on. And if you remember, this shiny part faces up. So we're gonna just put this back on, just like that. And the grease, I think, will help for 2 reasons. Just help lubricate everything and make it a lot easier. You know what? I'm gonna put a little bit of grease too on this shaft here to help it turn on the inside. You can't have enough grease on this kind of stuff. So go ahead and set this in. Yeah, I like how that turns now. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and hopefully get this in there now. We're gonna put it back on the drum. We're gonna turn our block so it kind of lines up there. I just gotta somehow get that lined up in there, and I think I can get it, but there we go. All right, I believe I'm in the hole in the doesn't look like I'm. Now we are. All right, now we're all the way in. So we got the band back on. Now it looks like, yeah, it's working. It's clamping down, so we get more force on that. The band will actually compress around the actual drum and stop this tire, which would be up on the tractor, the left side, from moving. So I'm gonna actually probably go ahead and put the cover back on, and we're gonna wire brush these splines and hopefully adjust the brakes to where they are adequate enough for me. I don't want them too tight and I don't want them too loose. I want them right in the middle. So we'll go ahead and I cleaned out our plate. Got a little bit of paint off of it, but it is what it is. We're gonna put this piece on the bottom and the grease will help it stick. We're gonna slide this back on over the studs. And just like that, we lost the piece with the grease. We'll stick it right back on again, and hopefully she will stay. Well, it looks like we have to turn those a little bit. That's why she's not going on. There we go. All right, go ahead and put our one nut on to hold this thing moving. Keeps those 2 little locks in. Have to look and see what they're for. I wasn't really quite sure based on the book. Okay, we got our stud that came out down at the bottom. Bolt up in the top. And a bolt down in the bottom. All right, you can kind of see me right here. Go ahead and tighten everything up now. Start at the bottom, work my way up. We'll wait to tighten these down completely. Get them nice and snug. We are compressing up against 1, 2, 3, 4 shims. I can just barely get my ratchet in here. All right. This is just a dry housing, so we shouldn't have any oil coming out of here. So Now, based off of how this is, this tire shouldn't move if I were to pull on that. All right, everybody, so a little interesting development here with the brakes. So if you remember when I took this linkage off, it was like this, and I had that line marked down here on this linkage here. Well, the book actually shows it the other way, and I took this off and I was messing around with it off the camera, and this is how it's supposed to be. Opposite of the mark. So someone was on this doing brakes before I was and had this arm here on backwards. So I just fixed that. We're gonna go ahead and install this, and I figured that out by doing the other side because I repeated the process, cleaned everything out, and we're gonna go ahead and put our linkage on now, which should be very similar. And I was just actually having my there we go. So I got that pin on the bottom end. Let me tighten this serration clamp down here. But I was testing out the other side, and I just, for the life of me, couldn't get the brakes to work. So I went back to the book and noticed, oh yeah, it was on backwards. Once we get this tightened up, the brakes actually do work very nice. I'll put some cotter keys in this here in a second, but I'll show you here. All right, so go ahead and push it without the brakes on. See how it rolls? Then as soon as I go, now it's stopped. Just like how this should work. All because that linkage was backwards. Kind of see here in the book that the linkage is supposed to point toward the front instead of the rear. So that's what's nice about these books, is you can actually use them to see if you have any problems. I'm gonna throw a couple cotter keys in, and then I'll show you guys another significant development on this tractor. All right, everybody, so just got done adjusting the brakes on this thing, and the brakes are working perfect. We also got some side panels for this tractor. Now, you remember we had side panels for it, but they fit an Oliver 88. They were too big and they were too long. I ended up finding a set on Facebook Marketplace. So yeah, this tractor is coming along. Now that we got the brakes done, I can actually focus on some body work and some painting, which I'm gonna do probably some today. I might sand that panel, beat that ripple out, get this thing looking nice. We're gonna have to end up looking for the rear panels, which we can find those, but it's coming together. I am gonna pull the top hood off again today, and I'm gonna install the battery cover, so that's all good. We are getting there though. I think this thing should be ready to come together here in a couple days, come out of the shop. But I think today we accomplished a few things. We got, number one, our brakes fixed. I think that's the biggest part here. And if you were watching, all we did was really, I adjusted this linkage a little bit off the camera just to achieve the proper play on the brake pedal. But we also flipped these cast iron linkages around, and that was the biggest thing. They were backwards. So now we got brakes on the tractor, so we'll go ahead and finish up with the body work. And you guys like videos where we restore antique tractors and do things with tin work, brakes, and all that kind of stuff. I think you'll like 3 Generations Restoration. So stay tuned for more, and if you like the channel, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.